Was Weimar doomed from the beginning? Bergfrieden was a state of unity between all parties in Germany, combining their efforts to support the war. The collapse of this idea ultimately had implications for the Weimar government, and there were many ways it led to the Weimar Republic's inevitable failure. Towards the end of the war, the different political groups and parties were starting to split due to their different aims and aspirations for Germany. For example, there were differences in the aims of peace resolutions between the SPD and the German Fatherland Party, the former wanting peace without victory, the latter wanting German annexation. This highlights the existence of broad political differences, and therefore the collapse of Bergfrieden, and the unity it had created. The aforementioned groups also had vast numbers of supporters, demonstrating that there was a broad spectrum of political views in Germany. This means that the Weimar government would find it extremely difficult, perhaps impossible, to please all of these various groups. The strong left and right polarization of German politics was also clear from the uprisings and strikes that these groups enacted. Examples of such events are the Kapp Putsch, the Munich Putsch, and the Spartacist uprising. These non-cooperative displays predicted the inevitable failure of the Weimar government, as they demonstrated that the new government could not exercise public control with such strong and active opposition from both sides of the political spectrum. The collapse of Bergfrieden caused further problems in the form of Ebert's leadership of the Weimar government. The fact that the new government was under SPD leadership would have caused strong opposition from the right, particularly due to Germany's strong militaristic history. This would have led to Weimar's failure as it contributed to events such as the Kapp Putsch, which made their rule extremely difficult. Initially, there was a heated struggle between the socialists and nationalists as to who would create the new government. This illustrates that there were extremely differing views between the two groups and the undeniable collapse of Bergfrieden. It also goes some way towards illustrating the inevitable failure of Weimar, as it would be impossible to operate a democratic government with such staunch opposition from so many angles. Another reason that the Weimar Republic was doomed to fail is that the idea of a democratic government was forced on Germany by America. The public never entirely voted for it so much as it was a result of strong international pressure. This would make it very hard for the Weimar government to operate, as they were not formally elected, which would have caused much public disdain, perhaps leading to the demonstrations of distaste, such as the Munich and Kapp Putsch. The Marxists, the USPD party in this instance, saw the end of Bergfrieden and the war as a chance to overthrow the forces of capitalism and to establish a workers' state. This clearly led to problems for the Weimar government, as this would mean they would face active and strong opposition from a radical group. The November Criminals myth. The November Criminals were the officials from the German Revolution who signed the armistice and the Treaty of Versailles. They were blamed for the failure of the war and were branded by Ludendorff and the media as the November Criminals. The instability of the Weimar Republic was ensured from the start due to their severe unpopularity. This made them open for many attacks from politicians and government officials such as Ludendorff and Hitler. Henceforth, this sparked many uprisings in attempts to overthrow the government, such as the Munich Putsch and the Spartacist uprising, showing how a vast majority of people showed hostility to the government, making them seem incapable of their command and deepening the resentment towards them. The stab-in-the-back theory augmented people's hatred towards the November Criminals, as not only were they the cause of the failure of the war, but they betrayed the army, making them appear unpatriotic and weak. This meant that civilians had a lack of trust in the government, and it would be hard for the Weimar Republic to remove the connotations of the November Criminals, as it would be carried with them for many years.
The Versailles Treaty suggests that the new Weimar Republic was doomed from the beginning, as between the months of January and July 1919, Germany not only had to cope with this new system of the Weimar government, but also encountered many serious problems due to the unjust and unequal consequences of the treaty's peace terms. These contributed to stripping the Weimar Republic of its power and led to a growth of people who distrusted the new government and were unwilling to support it. Firstly, the Weimar was doomed from the start, as Germany had no choice but to accept the treaty, as if they didn't sign it within 5 days of its announcement, they would face military action. The consequences of the Versailles Treaty were that Germany had to pay huge reparations to the Allied countries, crippling the German economy, which was already facing financial problems, and leaving the Weimar with a near impossible obstacle to overcome. Germany also had to return all German occupied territory to the country they originally belonged to. As a result, Germany was basically treated as a defeated nation, suggesting that the Weimar Republic was weak and spineless, and helped develop the stab in the back myth. This was the theory that German armies had not lost in battle but were undermined or stabbed in the back by socialists, communists, and pacifists. These peace terms caused immediate political demoralization and changed the minds of people who may otherwise have supported Weimar had it not been for the backlash of hatred among the German people because of the way Germany was treated, which the new government was not able to stop. This psychological damage of the German people caused by the treaty, along with stripping the nation of its power, destabilized the already fragile Weimar Republic, suggesting that the Weimar was doomed from the start. The Weimar Republic was not doomed from the start because of its constitution and democratic parliament. The constitution involved parliamentary democracy, which meant that the Reich Chancellor and cabinet needed majority support in the Reichstag, and under Article 54 would have to resign if they lost the confidence of the Reichstag. The Reichstag had to be elected every 4 years, and with the Reich election law, made sure that it would be elected by proportional representation. This was seen to be the fairest system by the SPD, and other parties liked it as it prevented the SPD gaining a majority of seats. The new constitution also allowed women to have the vote, making Germany one of the first countries in Europe to allow this. The new Bill of Rights that was introduced allowed for freedom of speech and the right to belong to a union, whereas in the previous parliament the Reichstag could easily be ignored if they objected to anything. The new constitution reflected compromise, having a broader spectrum of political opinion. It even included those on the nationalist right. The new constitution appealed to the people with the hope to introduce new social and economic rights, such as the right to work, providing for those who could not find a job, the right to a decent home, and equality. No one could be dismissed on the grounds of their sex, religion, or political choice. However, the Weimar Republic was doomed from the start because of its constitution, due to the fact that the president still held considerable power to counterbalance those held by the central parliament. He had the power to conclude treaties and alliances and had the right to dissolve the Reichstag, which had been a right of the Kaisers originally. The constitution was a product of compromise between the SPD, Centre Party, and DDP, who had been the most successful parties in the 1919 elections. As the years went on, neither party poll figures matched those of the votes achieved in 1919, and by 1928 they had dropped from 23.1 million to 14.3. The main features of the constitution were flawed. Proportional representation, parliamentary government, and civil liberties were not widely accepted. Although the new constitution involved social and economic rights, they could not sustain this idea, as they had to pay war reparations and therefore would have to take money from the rich, who would have preferred to have the old autocratic government. The new constitution was being made in a time of revolution. The Russian Revolution was facing opposition from extreme.
Another reason that you could consider Weimar to have been doomed from the start is due to the authoritarian and militaristic history of Germany. Germany had previously been controlled by a single authoritarian figure, namely the Kaiser. This is strongly contrasted with the nature of the new Weimar government, which was founded democratically. Naturally, there would be members in German society, likely to be aristocrat and Prussian, that would object to the abdication of the Kaiser and to the formation of this new system of ruling, as it would not play in their favour in the way the old regime had. Naturally, many of the right-wing former soldiers also objected to the new government, as they held no trust with it, due to the rumour of the betrayal of the November criminals. Old military groups still held much power in Germany, and they wished to convince people that only a strong Germany and not a democratic one could return Germany to its place of supremacy in the world. There was a lingering sense of anger and resentment over the German defeat. This created a large amount of public disdain. The country was also in a very bad state during the Weimar period, with high unemployment and scarcity of food. This led for powerful authoritarian figures such as Adolf Hitler to emerge.